Welcome to the Sorcery Podcast, your sacred space to delve into spiritual tools, topics, and practices that will illuminate your path of soul remembering and healing. I'm your host, Ligia Costa, a soul guide, alchemist, soul writing coach, and the creator of the Trust Pathway. I'm deeply grateful to have you here with me. Together, we will embark on a profound exploration of self-discovery and healing, unlocking the secrets that lie within. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sorcery Podcast. And today I have with me Sabriye Dubrie. And she is a spiritual author, a multidimensional healer, founder of Soul Embodiment Therapy and the School of Soul Embodiment. And I'm very, very excited to talk to her. We've been talking backstage and we have so many things in common. It's crazy. It's crazy. She's right now in Ibiza, where the weather is so much better than here in Wales. It's crazy.
It was raining here yesterday as well.
I'm sure it's warm.
Well, today it is. Yesterday it was just cold, gray, and rainy.
Oh no.
But we need those days on an island like this for the water reservoir and for the plants. So it's good. It's going to get pretty hot during the summer, so it will all evaporate.
Oh, I'm so envy right now. I hope we do have some sort of summer here, because last year we didn't. So, Sabriye, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do, how you came to be in this path of being a spiritual author and a healer?
Sure. So, well, maybe it's fun to go to the beginning. So, actually, I used to own a online marketing company. I used to be a internet business coach.
No, you did.
Yep, yep. And we used to make marketing optimized websites. It's a company I started from my kitchen table, and it's how I got my kids and myself off of welfare way back in 2011. And in 2014, I met someone online that like turned my world upside down. And I went to visit him in India, and I came back, and I was able to bring people in their past lives.
Wow.
So that's how this all started. So and at that time I was like working within the twin flame industry, as I had also recognized this person as my twin flame. And so I worked quite some time within the twin flame community as a twin flame coach, teacher, healer, and that's really where whole soul embodiment therapy came to be. But then what I noticed was that through my own healing, I simply evolved past this. To me, let's put it this way. To me, the twin flame journey is really about this catalyst to a completely new way of being. And what I found is that too many people stay stuck in this kind of like revolving circle around, am I going to be in a relationship with this person? And what I realized is that, it's not about this relationship with this person. It's really about stepping into this next way of being and this different kind of life. And even though a lot of people kind of like mentally grasp that within the twin flame community and kind of like repeat that, there's this glitch between actually living it, embodying it.
Right.
So, they kind of like stay stuck in that circle instead of really stepping out and going into that new life. And so I did that. And at that time I had like a program, twin flame program with around 350 people in it. I think like 25 people went with me. and
Wow.
then, and the rest was like, no, we're not interested in where you're going. So that was quite interesting. But I had really put the call out there that I wanted to work with people who were truly interested in their own healing and who didn't kind of like want to have this like woo woo way
Hmm.
of getting what they wanted, and then whatever that meant they'll do just because they wanted the end result that badly. Because that's what I realized at some point, like, I mean, twin flames will eat grass or drink poison if they, if they believe that that will bring their twin flame back to them. That's how crazy, you
Is
know
it? Wow.
yeah, it's really really intense. And it also, gives an idea of the level of the wounding that needs to be addressed. But yeah, the thing is, within that community, it all revolves around the union instead of around the healing. And so I had really like energetically put out that call, and all of a sudden I started getting psychiatrists as clients and psychologists as clients and psychotherapists as clients. And I was like, holy moly. I want more of these kind of clients, because these were people who were really in it for their own healing
Mm,
and really wanted to go all the way. And that's actually the people that showed me the soul path level. Yeah.
mm,
So these people had already done so much in their own healing work that when they came to me, I was suddenly able to bring them back to Atlantis, to Lemuria, to the split from source wound, the
wow.
incarnation wound. So they actually helped me to really open up this new depth of healing and understanding where all of our psychological patterns and subconscious programming is coming from. So, within contemporary psychology, we think that's created within our childhood.
Right.
And that is true to a certain extent, of course. But what I've really found is that especially through our split from source wound, we are completely predispositioned for the wounding we take on in our current lifetime. And the kind of like the psychological patterns that we're struggling with the most,
Mm,
those are one that we created already all the way back there you know
right.
and so it's been a fascinating journey. And yeah, I absolutely love it. And I still work with twin flame clients, but I work with twin flame clients now who are really like, okay, I know what you're talking about. I want to go all the way. I want to really work on my own healing.
Right.
And yeah, so
That's very interesting. I knew that you were involved with the twin flame, like you were a coach. For the listeners that are listening to this episode and they don't know what a twin flame is, can you expand on that?
yes. Well, okay. So, my definition of a twin flame is a soul recognition relationship, that you really like recognize each other on a soul level, that is meant to be a catalyst for both of you to enter into a different state of being. And like, even though you don't come into like a physical romantic relationship together, that effect remains. So if I look at the guy that I recognize as my twin flame, so when I came to visit him in India, and he's always been kind of like the more skeptical and more like, I don't know, and he was really like, I'm sitting here next to you, but I don't have the feeling that you're this stranger that flew all the way out here, just to meet. He says, I have the feeling I've known you all my life. And that's this. I remember the first time I heard his voice, and I was like, oh my God, you're back. Like, that came into my mind. I mean, I heard his voice, and I instantly recognized him. I was like, back, I was like,
My God.
and so that's kind of that recognition. And then the other part is, I went through this whole process of my own. And one of the most recent times that we kind of like had this contact with each other, because he's married at the moment, he has a child, he's doing his life. And then he was telling me that he was going into the Advaita teachings, The
Mm.
Advaita teachings are oneness teachings.
Right.
So, so kind of like, even though we both took a completely different path, we came out to the same end result. That's really indicative for a twin flame relationship. And often people kind of like recognize that part, but then because they don't come together, they'll say like, well, no, that was my twin flame, or my false twin flame, or my catalyst twin flame. And I've always said there's no such thing as a fake twin flame or a false twin flame or all of that. It doesn't exist. Someone is your twin flame or they aren't. It's
Right.
not. You don't have all of these kind of like classifications for who's not. They're not. And so that's really been for me how to recognize the twin flame. And yeah, there is of course the more traditional interpretation, which is that you are the same soul split into two. And that could very well be, I mean, on a soul level we make a lot of fragmentation, so that could be. But my point with that is also, or my criticism with that is always that, even if that is the case, it doesn't give you the right to interfere in someone else's journey,
Mm.
which is often, kind of what happens, because it's like, oh yeah, but it doesn't matter because we're the same soul, so I can just do that because he's me. And I'm like, no,
Uh,
no. You can't.
did you encounter people saying those
Oh,
things?
yep, yep.
Really?
Yeah. There's a lot of lack of integrity. There's a lot of obsessiveness. But the thing is, underlying, because you could say that sounds a little bit judgmental, but underlying all of it is a lot of wounded behavior. I
Hmm.
think that's the best way to describe it. Underlying all of this, what people encounter within the twin flame relationship is a lot of wounding. And that is the thing, the whole of our lives, all of the relationships we have, especially our intimate relationships, are mirrors to us, that help us like see what is left unresolved. And I would say that the twin flame relationship is like a magnifying glass. It is so up in your face. It's like
Wow.
it exposes all the parts of you that you do not want to look at. But once you realize that, then you realize that those are actually things that you can use to become more whole, and to heal these wounded parts within yourself. And I think that's also really what for me differentiates a twin flame relationship from a regular relationship. At some point in the quote unquote normal romantic relationships, you separate, and it's kind of like, finished. There's no further growth. And the thing is, within a twin flame dynamic, doesn't matter if you see each other, it doesn't matter if you're together, if you're not together, if they're with someone else, or if they're not even alive anymore. Kind of like that impulse to
Mm.
that catalyst effect to bringing up your wounding remains. Once you've met, it kind of like keeps on, because it starts a process that you can't stop.
Wow.
That's basically what it is. It starts a process that you cannot stop anymore. But it's an amazing process, because it really allows you to step into the truth of who you are. So it's
Mm.
beautiful. Yeah.
And from your experience, do you find everyone in their lifetimes meet their twin
No,
flames?
no, no, no,
No.
no, no, no. I do believe that everyone does have a twin flame. There's also, a school of thought that says, well, there's only 144,000 twin flames. I don't believe that, because I don't believe in any teachings that make someone more special than others.
Mm.
Yeah. So I simply believe that everyone has a twin flame. Because likewise, there are also like spiritual teachers who will say, well, I don't have a twin flame, because, I'm already this evolved that.
Mm.
So,
I know.
it doesn't matter how you do it, those are ego games. So,
It is.
yeah,
So
exactly.
ego, yeah. Yeah.
So whether you say I don't have a twin flame because I've already evolved past that, or you're saying, well, but only the special people have twin flames, it's kind of the same thing. So, but I truly believe everyone has their twin flame, but just not everyone needs to meet their twin flame within this lifetime. And
Mm.
and so that's also a thing, for me, trying to find your twin flame is a recipe for disaster. What happens is that people project this kind of like unattainable love onto every person they meet, and then it's like,
Mm.
oh, this person is my twin flame. And I know people who've had like six different twin flames,
Whoa.
which obviously isn't really the truth, but they just keep on looking for that. And but like even those kind of patterns are of course wounded patterns, where
Yeah.
we need to find love outside of ourselves in such a way that it has to be perfect, etc., etc. So it's interesting, and it's just beautiful to see like what comes up within such a journey, and how that's even true outside of like the twin flame journey. Like anything that we encounter within our lives is an opportunity to heal.
Mm.
So one of like the things that I recognized within the twin flame journey, let's take that as an example now, was that there was also this almost this aspect that if I could get this guy to choose for me, that would finally prove my worth. that's
Mm.
that's one of the ones that I was like, aha, okay, that's
Interesting. Yeah.
that's interesting and based on a lot of false beliefs. And so, there are like these subconscious drives within us that drive us to certain behaviors simply because they are part of our wounding. And so now to like stray from the twin flame theme, and go more to like regular themes, one of the things that I'm working on now, I just recently wrote a soul path series, which was amazing. It was so fun,
Mm.
all about how the whole soul journey went from the split from source to the split of the masculine and feminine, our galactic lifetimes, our lifetimes in Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, the incarnation wound, etc., etc. And it was an amazing series to write. And I've now just started on a Healing the Patriarchy series,
Wow.
and that one is also, I'm loving it at this moment. I just published today, I published one on the mother wound, and like the deeper layers of the mother wound, because when we look at the mother wound, we often just look at the relationship with the mother, right?
Mm.
But on a collective level, the mother wound is about the disempowerment that we as mothers pass on through the female lineage to our daughters. And there's this dynamic that girls, in order to survive, surrender their power,
Mm.
not to lose their mother's love and appreciation, their love and attention and
Wow.
acceptance. And that's a child decision that we make, right? It's
Mm.
a decision that we make as a child in order to survive our circumstances,
Yes.
because we need the mother to survive. And so we can't outshine her, we can't outperform her, etc., etc., because we need her to take care of us. And this is a pattern that continues way into adulthood, which is behind not being able to take up space, behind, for example, not being able to make promotion, excel on the corporate ladder. It's got a lot to do with our money wounding as women. If you
Mm.
look at female entrepreneurs, 88% of female entrepreneurs are not making 100K a year. Yeah, so that's really a lot. And the reason for that is because we are being held small by our own subconscious internalized patriarchy.
Mm.
And so those are things that we need to then look at in order to release them, so that we can step into our power, that we can step into our leadership roles, that we can make the revenue that we want to make, that we can have these equal relationships. Yeah,
Mm.
because when we have internal patriarchal conditioning, yeah, and we subconsciously believe that the feminine is inferior to the masculine, it shows up in our romantic relationships as well. And it can show up as codependency. It can show up as people pleasing within, the relationship with a partner, within relationships in work, and with other people in our lives. It has such far reaching consequences, and we're not aware of the fact that it's there because
Mhm.
it's all held within the subconscious. And
Right.
so that's really true for all of it. That's true within the twin flame community and everything that they're facing there. And that's one of the things that I heard there a lot, that they were saying, like, I don't remember having any childhood trauma. I had a good childhood. I can't think of anything that was traumatic to me. And the thing is that that's quite normal. We don't
Mm.
remember often
Yes.
our traumatic experiences. Plus, we inherit trauma from our ancestral
Mm.
lineages and from our past life predecessors. And so, what I've really found is that unless you start looking for it, you're not going to find it. And until you start looking for it, you will not know how much it's influencing you without you even being aware of it.
Yes.
So that's really what I work with within my work, is this subconscious, and then really leading people to the soul truth. Because that's what I found, is that when we expose the subconscious mind to the soul truth
Mm.
rather than the memory,
Yes.
that it will automatically reprogram the subconscious mind because it recognizes the soul truth.
Mm. That's so amazing. I love the fact that you mix psychology with spirituality, which to me, they just complement each other. And it has to be that way
Yes.
because,
Yeah.
yes, we are working with the spiritual realm and mindset. I feel like you can work with the mindset alone, but you only take you so far. The
Yes.
same way the spirituality, you can work with the spiritual practices and so on, but you only take you so far. I
Yes.
think it's just the magic is when we mix both and we complement both. And I
Yes.
love that you do that. I absolutely love that you do that because it gives another understanding of the wounding. It's just
Yes.
not myths or things like we say because we heard someone said it before. It's actual facts.
Yeah.
It happens, and I love that you talked about how we have inherent trauma. So
Yes.
we have generational trauma which we are not aware of,
No.
that is passed on up to 7 generations, and this
Yeah.
is proved psychologically as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Through epigenetics. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I love this conversation.
High five.
I love this. We're talking the same language. So would you like to, because I try my best to educate my followers, my listeners and my clients about this.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear, because you have a vast experience. I would love to hear your take on this generational trauma and how this is so important to heal in order for us to leave our soul's path.
Okay. I will do that, but first I want to add one more thing to the mother wound,
Yes.
because on a soul path level, the
Yeah.
mother wound is actually our wounding with life, with the great mother who has birthed us 1,000 times into each incarnation. And
Oh.
so, yeah. And so when we have mother wounding issues in our current lifetime, they're actually helping us heal this wound with life itself. So
Mm.
even that deeper layer is in there.
That's so interesting. And you're talking a lot. I don't know if you are aware, I'm a childhood abuse survivor. So I have
Mm.
a lot of with my relationship with my mother. I've done past life regressions where we found that we were together in other lives,
Yes.
and she was in the role of my mother in some of them, and the dynamic was basically the same. So
Oh,
now,
that's interesting.
yeah, so it's been a wound that I've been healing for a long time, for a
Oh,
lot of lives. And now that you're talking about this,
makes a
being,
lot of sense, huh?
it does, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's about trusting that life is there and is going to take care of us. and it's going to support us, and it's going to nourish us, and to
Mm.
really, it's even, the wounding of the feminine,
Yeah.
being able to fully relax and surrender, to open up and receive. Yeah.
Mm.
And so when we have a mother wound, that's often the problem, that we can't open up,
And
receive,
it's,
or be vulnerable,
mm.
because, abuse leads to a collapse in a masculine. And we're kind of like going quickly to different topics. But when we have a collapse in a masculine, the rigid inner feminine is the result, because without the masculine to protect her, she has to defend herself. And so
Mm.
she can only do that by sacrificing her own femininity. And that means armoring up, closing down in order
Yeah.
to not be hurt. And so that's really what we see in this type of wounding as well.
Mm.
And when we can heal that on this deepest level, then we can truly go into the feminine, because the mother also represents the feminine in,
Yes.
this lifetime. So it's all wounding around the feminine. And
That's
yeah,
very interesting.
yeah,
And it does ring true, not being able to be open to receiving. I
yeah,
struggle a lot with that.
yeah,
Receiving help, receiving
yes,
support, receiving
yes,
money,
yes,
receiving
yeah,
love. Yeah.
yes, yeah. And so, but that all goes back to, this wound with life
Mm.
itself. Yeah, because what happens is the ego, kind of like, again, a big jump. But so when we die, there's only one body that follows us. Yeah, so every body dies. The mental, emotional, vibrational, physical body, they all die. There's one body that follows us, and that's the causal body. And the causal body, that holds our karmic templates, and it also holds our higher ego. So there's this higher ego that follows us from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, that has kind of like an interface with our ego personality in this lifetime. And so all the experiences that we have within one lifetime are, as it were, uploaded to this higher ego, and this higher ego sees that as all the experiences of the self. That's why past lives feel like our own,
Mm.
even when we were not the person having that experience, right? And so that accumulation throughout all of these lifetimes, that creates this wound with life, this
I
idea
see.
of I'm not safe.
Mm.
And it's by really revisiting that, and seeing that despite the fact that we went through all of these experiences, life was always there to support us, hold us, and nurture us. So yeah, it's a deeper wound that needs to be worked on really on a soul path level. But I also want to answer the other question that you asked me. we're going we're going deep and all over the place. But
I love that.
the other question is, the generational trauma. And so what I've really found in my work is that we choose, because like there's a lot of schools of thoughts around generational trauma and misunderstandings, that we are somehow burdened by our ancestors,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
with trauma that they didn't heal, and that they didn't take responsibility for, blah 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 blah. And I disagree. Yeah. What I've seen in my work is that we never get any generational trauma that does not help us release our own specific personal past life trauma. And so what I've seen is that when we are born into a family lineage, it's because the people in that lineage are sharing the same soul themes that they're still struggling with. And
Mm.
that can be like power abuse, it can be victimhood and perpetration, it can be sexual abuse, it can be all kinds of themes. Yeah,
Right.
whatever, they've all been struggling with throughout lifetimes and lifetimes, they then come together to kind of like pool their resources to help each other heal individually.
Mm.
And that's how I look at transgenerational or ancestral trauma.
Right. Okay.
So it's actually, instead of a curse, it's a blessing.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
another way for us to bring in the wounding. And so we can do that through, for example, childhood trauma. But if we would bring everything in through childhood trauma, then the chances would be that we would be traumatized beyond repair, right?
Yeah.
So rather, what we do is we kind of like put it in there subconsciously from the ancestral lineage. And so it's almost baked into the cake when we're born,
Hmm.
and then the childhood trauma acts as like a catalyst. And
Right.
so that's really what I found, is that when we're really going into healing deep patterns, it's often they're hooked in those three timelines. So there's a hook in a past life, there's a hook in childhood, but there's also a hook in the ancestral, and they're all related.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so they were all different attempts to heal this one pattern that
Hmm.
has already been existing throughout previous lifetimes.
Oh, I see. And hence the intergenerational trauma and scientifically epigenetics.
Yeah.
So the triggers are there and we feel the triggers as in we were reliving the same thing.
So we it's almost as if it's there subconsciously. Then we have these and it's there subconsciously as well from past lives. So we have it there subconsciously from two pasts. And
Hmm.
then we have the childhood trauma that kind of like brings it up into this lifetime,
Hmm.
because that's the thing. And that's also what I notice in sessions. The trauma that we experience in this lifetime is the one that we identify with the strongest. It's the one that we hold on to the deepest.
Hmm.
It's the one that we're like, this is ours. Yeah. And so with past life trauma, people are more able to say, oh yeah, okay, well, that was then. And so by making it ours in this lifetime, it kind of like puts it into a top priority. It like
Right. Yes.
increases the priority in
Hmm.
order to be released. So
Hmm.
it's just all internal mechanisms to heal. And then there's the external part of it. What I've really found in my work is that the people and experiences and situations that we attract into our lives are there to help us release this subconscious wounding.
Hmm.
And so everything is always happening for
For
us.
us.
It's never happening against us. Yeah. So these experiences are there to help us trigger these subconscious wounds that we're holding
Hmm.
in order to help us release them. Sometimes people have gone through multiple series of relationships with narcissistic abuse, for example, or they have a narcissistic parent or a narcissistic boss or something like that, and really what they're taking is this initiation in power.
Hmm.
Because once we have a narcissist in our lives, what are they initiating us in? Stepping into our power. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So rather than see it as I am the victim of the narcissist because I'm an empath, etc., etc., we kind of like get lost in the story. It's much more about realizing, okay, this is happening so that I can step into my power.
Hmm.
Yeah, because a narcissist doesn't give you any other choice.
Nope.
That's 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 the initiation. And so that, but even there, then people sometimes have difficulty seeing that opportunity because of the way that they've been conditioned to look at life.
Yes.
And so a lot of my work is to help people step into their power, to realize that they are not being victimized. Or one of my favorite subjects is, of course, black magic, dark forces, and
Oh, really?
the likes. Yeah, well, there's a lot of people, and especially again in the twin flame community, that rather than face what really wants to be faced, say, well, no, but that's because I'm being cursed, or it's because somebody did something to me.
Hmm.
And that's, of course, the easy way out. And it's a very disempowered way of viewing life, because if there's this evil supernatural force that can simply, excuse my French, fuck with you whenever whenever it likes, you know
Yeah.
then you're never safe. So what
Exactly.
what does that create? Hypervigilance. You're
Yes.
never safe. Yeah. So it's really important then to like really go and look past these like superficial explanations and really look at, well, what's underneath,
Yes.
what is truly happening. And so recently I was working with a client. This is maybe a beautiful one to talk about. So I was working with a client who has very tenacious, absolutely tenacious beliefs in black magic. And so she was shown this past life in which the church performed an exorcism on her. And
Mm.
so I guided her through that past life experience. And the only thing that the church had, and this is like in a medieval past lifetime, was hours and hours and hours of mental and physical torture. They simply tortured her into the belief, and it just became a brainwash session, with pre modern times waterboarding. She was dunked into the water excessively
Wow.
until she kind of like gave up and said, okay, I will say what you want me to say, I will do what you want me to do,
Mm.
just stop.
Oh,
And that was the way that they performed exorcisms. And of course that's not an exorcism,
no. That's brainwash.
that's a brainwash. And so I said to her, I said, look, if exorcism and demonic possession was really a thing, then why didn't they have a solution? They had no solution. They had to torture you for hours to get you, to do what they wanted you to do. And so that really kind of like exposed her to yet another layer of falsehood. But it's because we've had these experiences and they were so traumatic.
Mm.
That's why we have such deep seated beliefs in them. And so I work with a lot of people who have kind of like this programming of the dark forces attacking the light, etc., etc. And I take them all the way back to understanding that it was never true to begin with. And
Mm.
so that's part of the work that I absolutely love doing, because it's a very empowering, but it also really sets people free, and it
Mm.
helps them to really reset their nervous system as well, because when you're in this state of hypervigilance, that's very taxing for the nervous system as
It
well.
is. It is.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's very empowering of your clients to have the courage and the awareness and the self actualization and emotional intelligence to go and seek for answers.
yeah,
Because you can stay in the victim archetype, blaming these dark forces or these external circumstances all your life
yes,
for the circumstances that you are living. And you
yes,
just get into this loop of blaming and poor me, this is happening to me, and not seeking healing. But
yeah,
when they actually go and ask for help, like your client did, you kind of just stepping into the sovereign
exactly.
and getting into, okay, I know there is something else more here that I
Yeah.
need to find out in order to heal.
Well, actually, sometimes they fight me tooth and nail to the end.
Really?
Yeah. It's not always voluntarily, you know. And sometimes they're like, what? No, because it's precious. It's
Mm.
that's the thing that we sometimes don't realize, is that even when certain things do not serve us, they've been there so long that they've become like dear old friends. And so sometimes it's very difficult to let go of these kind of like crutches, because we've grown so attached to them. So
Mm.
it's not always completely voluntarily that they do so, but then in the end, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy."
Oh, right. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Because it's like, it's that sense of familiarity and safety, even though it doesn't serve us. The thing is, when we go through trauma or we are living into these, activations for so long, that's all we
Yes,
know.
yes,
And is the adaptations that we created in order to survive. So we kind of
exactly.
see it as part of who we are. So if we
Yes,
lose that, we
Yes.
kind of feel like we are losing part of ourselves, but it's just a story that we learn. It's a
Yes.
narrative that is not true, it's a false belief that was
Yes.
created just to create this adaptation where we feel like we can survive and carry on living.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically a false part of the self.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it's not the real self. But because we use it as a protective mechanism, as a survival
Yes.
mechanism, we feel attached to it because we need it.
Yeah.
And going back to the mother wound, and basically all of patriarchal wounding, that's all survival wounding.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
very interesting to see that, but it's all about needing to survive. And what I really saw in regards to the patriarchy is that when we started out on planet Earth as human beings, we were nomadic, right? And we didn't have agriculture. We
Yeah.
were hunters and gatherers. And so within that setting, it made total sense to need men to protect us,
Mm.
and to provide for us because they were the ones hunting the animals and they were the ones protecting us against rivaling tribes. And so that became a successful survival strategy for humankind. And what I've found out through, writing this series, and I'm only on the second installment, is that every time that we went through difficult times throughout humanity, famine, droughts, war, natural disasters, we reverted to that system.
Mm.
Yeah. And so historically, there's now evidence that in those times, boys were better fed, better taken care of than girls, simply because we remembered that taking good care of men and boys was a successful survival strategy for our species. And so that became programmed in our reptilian brain. And as soon as disaster hits, that's the programming that we start playing out. So that's
Wow.
very interesting, right?
Wow. It makes so much sense.
It does.
It
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we see, like with wars, we send men to wars,
Yes. Yeah.
isn't it? Like every time we need protection and safety, we send the man. But I
Yes.
didn't know about, feeding men better than feeding girls or
Yes.
feeding boys. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. So actually, it was in a session. So I also have a certification program for a soul embodiment therapist. And one of my therapists who was in her certification process, they need to give me a session so that I know that where they're at in their.
Progress.
Yes, exactly. What level of depth they can facilitate within a session.
Mm.
So I read the case studies, but I also want to experience it myself. And so she gave me a session. And in that session, I went back to a lifetime when Tibet and Nepal were still one country. So Nepal used to be a part of Tibet. And in that lifetime, I saw that as a young girl, I was starved in order to feed the boys and men. And I Googled it, and that's when I found a research that
Wow.
showed that for, I believe it's from 1700 to 1950. It's called the Missing Girls Project, and it's linked in the patriarchal healing the patriarchy series on my website. I'll give you the link that you can
Yes,
share
please.
with everyone. And so what they found is that for those 250 years, that was a repeating pattern. As soon as there was a crisis, that families reverted to this behavior of feeding the boys better than the girls. And that actually in those times, even though that girls are biologically hardwired to have better survival rates during famine and disease, that many more girls died in those periods than boys. And that was simply because of the preferential treatment that boys got because they were needed for survival. So
That's
it's
so
it's
interesting.
it's fascinating. It is
Wow.
fascinating. But the most fascinating part is how we are unaware of how we are still perpetuating this belief system within our own families because it's such a subconscious pattern.
Mm.
We're unaware of how we're passing it on to our future generations, our children.
It is. And
Yeah.
again, it gets to prove. the ancestral, and isn't it? It goes back to the
Yeah,
same wounding.
yeah, yeah.
It's a collective wounding. All of these things are a collective wounding. The life wounding that you were talking about, the motherhood wounding, the intergenerational slash ancestral wounding is all collective. We, as a
Yes.
collective, we are still perpetuating these things.
Exactly, exactly. And it's passed down, from
Mm,
generation to generation without us actually realizing that we're passing it on. So recently I was working with one of my clients. She's a doctor. And then we were looking at, well, what was keeping her from earning more? So she's a six-figure earner, but she wants to earn more. And she's at the beginning of six figures. So and earning six figures is not the same as having six figures because we all
yes.
know that taxes come around.
Yes.
So we were looking at her, like what was blocking her money, and it was this kind of belief system. It was just this idea that as a girl, she or as a woman, she was not as valuable as men.
Wow.
And so what I found is that part of that conditioning is even past lives beliefs of us as men believing something about women. So even though we're women now, and I had this myself, I mean, in 2009, I led this feminist bombing of articles and then this event where we wanted to have equal validation for the feminine and the masculine. And I've always been very much for that on like a conscious level. And then I think it was like 2 years ago, I did a session with a healer. And one of the beliefs that came up was I was a Dutch man in that lifetime. I'm Dutch this lifetime as well, but I was a Dutch man in that lifetime. And the belief that I held on to subconsciously was a religious belief. Women are not created equal in the eyes of God. That was my belief as a man.
Wow.
Yeah. And the thing is, and this is the part that people do not recognize or realize enough, is that subconscious beliefs are much stronger than conscious beliefs. So it doesn't matter what you consciously believe. If you subconsciously believe something that contradicts your conscious belief system, it will cancel it out.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why we need to, make all of this conscious. And I love, the Carl Jung quote, until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate,
Mm.
because that is the truth. All of these subconscious beliefs are creating our future. And often, if you look at the high vibe tribe, they're like, oh, I have to keep my energy high. I need to be in a high vibration, etc., etc. But the thing is that if you do not address this stuff that is within the subconscious, then it doesn't matter
Mm.
how high you try to vibe, you're not going to get there because all of this subconscious stuff is dragging down your energy field. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
So we need to address the stuff that's underneath.
And we've
And
talked about it in the podcasts before about this. We brought to people's attention because there is, I think, since 2020, the modern spirituality, the high vibrational spirituality kind of thing just blew up,
yeah,
and there is a lot of misconceptions around it. A lot of misconception. You just like follow these gurus or these influencers on Instagram, and they don't show you the whole truth. They don't show you the mess. And until you're ready to feel it, you can't heal it.
I love that. Yeah.
Isn't
Yes,
that the truth? Just
it
keeping
is.
on the vibrational thing, like it's like I don't believe in fake until you make it.
No.
I really don't believe that because it doesn't work like it. It
Well, I
doesn't.
mean, it can in some cases, but it doesn't when we're talking about this. Yeah,
Mm,
I mean, sometimes it's just good to take action,
yeah.
but we cannot bypass, because that's basically what they're doing. They're
Mm,
emotionally, mentally, sometimes spiritually trying to bypass their wounding, and that doesn't work. It's going to sit there until the end of days. We were just talking about it before in regards to generational trauma. We have to deal with it. We have to really go into it, face it,
mm,
and then really release the unresolved pain and trauma that we've been holding on to. That's actually another part of my work. It's not just helping people find these false beliefs, but it's also helping people release the stuck emotions that
Mm.
have been trapped in their vibrational field sometimes for millennia. It's been there so long. I work with men and women. I work with more women than I do with men, but it's very common for like the guys to say like, I'm crying. Why am I crying? But the release is happening because
It has
it
to happen. Yeah.
has to happen. It has to be released, and they're like short circuiting in the brain. Like, there's no reason for me to cry yet. All these emotions are coming out. And then I'm just like, okay, that's really good. Just allow yourself to feel it, breathe through it. That's part of the work. And I think also what is really beautiful with the men that I often work with is that the men that come to me because they want to reclaim their masculinity.
Oh, I would think that it was the feminine energy that they wanted.
No,
Oh, that's
no.
interesting.
Yeah, no, I think the guys who would need that would not feel comfortable maybe with such a woo woo way of doing it, because
Mm.
they would be very much in their masculine, and then perhaps, but no, the guys that come to me really, really are ready to reclaim their masculinity. And often they've kind of like disowned it because of father wounding, because of past life wounding around power, around being a man, patriarchal conditioning.
Mm.
So that is really one of the most beautiful things that I see in the relationship with men, and then their healing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic work. That's
Yeah.
fantastic work. And I do believe, like with all healing journeys that we take, depending on where we are in our healing journeys, we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And there are times where we feel called to do this sort of work that you do with your clients, which is fantastic. But I do believe with any healing work that we do, it's our soul mission. It's part of our soul's path. Do
Yes.
you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. And I probably am one of the few healers that recommend my clients to work with a lot of different healers. And the reason why I do that is because there are different levels that
Mm.
need to be worked at. And so in my training, also in my certification training, I explain to my students, look, with soul embodiment therapy, we work vertically. We go down, 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 down to the depths. But not every wounding type needs that kind of healing. Sometimes you need to work horizontally. Yeah.
Mm.
So then you need a healing modality that can address it at that level. Yeah. If you work with, for example, inner child wounding,
Mm.
yeah, one session is not going to be enough.
Mm.
That relationship with the inner child is so damaged, you need a lot more work. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there are all these different layers that we need to work on. And so what I've really found in my own healing journey, and what I've really worked on with my clients, is like get them to work with many different healers, because what happens is the healing work starts to build on each other and
Yes.
really allows for this deeper transformation that you otherwise might not get because you're just working, for example, horizontally or vertically. Does
Mm.
that make sense?
It does. It does. Perfect sense. And it's one of the reasons why I have guests on the podcast.
Yeah.
The listeners and my followers, if they feel invited to, because that's the thing, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I believe when they are ready, it will ring true. The words will just feel so familiar, so true, so homey, that
Yeah.
we feel like, yes, that is the person that I want to work with now. That's the person that I want to follow, to know more. So I'm ready to do this work. Because, as you say, it builds on each other.
Yeah.
It
It does.
does. It does. I've been doing my own healing journey for over a decade now.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it's just layers, 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 but for different layers. Oh my god. I was like, why? Why am I still working on this? So annoying. but it's just,
Yeah.
it's just the way it is. We know that. But in different stages of this healing journey, I needed different people to guide me.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And it really also depends on like the healers, for example, I was sexually abused as a child. I'm an incest survivor. And so I tried to work on this wounding with various healers that I just couldn't access it with
Mm.
until I worked with the right person with the right healing modality. And that actually allowed me to really go into that wounding when, even when I tried with other healers, that simply wasn't possible.
True.
Yeah, because the safety wasn't there, the modality wasn't the right modality, so that's really a thing that you have to like be at the right time in the right place with the right circumstances, because I found out that this was the case when I was 25. I didn't start healing the incest until I was 40,
Bless.
because even though I tried to heal it, it wasn't the time yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and the tools weren't the right tools. And so but I also always think that that is such a great example, because all that time I thought, because I knew that I had been sexually abused and because I didn't hate my father, that I had been healed.
Mm. Mm. But
And
now we know all about codependency and attachment theories and all of these things, and then we understand that's actually a trauma response.
exactly, and there were so many aspects that still wanted to be healed and to be seen around that. And with incest, there's also always the mother that didn't protect you for whatever reason. In my case, my mother wasn't there to protect me, but yeah, she also simply didn't pick up on it. And so there's all these different layers to it that need to be looked at, and for which we need the right people.
True.
Yeah.
True. The right people that had the right tools, the right knowledge, right. I don't like to call it certifications because
No.
that's not what it is. And that's one thing that I tell my clients and followers and listeners here in the podcast. If you're going to work on something that was very traumatic, don't just pick someone,
Yeah.
at least pick someone that is either trauma informed or that is a therapist that can hold space, a hold safe space for you to do this work. Because
Yes.
otherwise, just can re-traumatize everything and make everything worse.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I think we feel called to. When we come from a place of trust and soul whispering, like when we feel, okay, that is the right person, that's the right time for me, I believe that everything is panning out the way it is.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes we can come from a place of ego without knowing, where we go into like fear of missing out or because of all these
Yeah.
vibe around it, and we don't recognize that. And what happens is, and I've seen so many people investing in coaches, mentors, healers, where they come out not having what they were expecting that they were going to have.
Yeah.
It's not even just the investment, and I wouldn't like to say it's the expectation, but the healing wasn't done and they came
Yeah.
out worse. And I've seen like so many people coming out worse and re-traumatized from things because it wasn't the right person in that moment.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Going back to this twin flame thing, that's really prevalent there,
Mm,
because basically anyone who's working within the like twin flame community is doing so based on their own twin flame experience. So there's a lot of people offering therapy there that are absolutely not qualified. And I've
mm,
had like clients come to me that were rejected because they were homosexual,
mm,
that people refused to work with them based on that, or that somebody had severe wounding. and
Mm.
that the therapist refused to work with, which was actually good, of course, that they refused to work with them, but still, but they
Without explaining, it can trigger the rejection wounding as well, isn't it?
exactly. I've also seen that a lot. And then of course, what I've seen a lot within the twin flame industry. So there's like three solutions within the twin flame industry. There's the healers therapists, there's the psychics, and then there's the psychics who remove curses and things like that. I know people who had spent $12,000 on removing curses and things like that in order to be together with their twin flame, and they could have spent that money on their healing.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or the psychics that, like, yes, you're going to come together, and this is going to be your person, and that kind of stuff. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and it can be very damaging to people. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're gonna probably don't hate me for saying this.
Oh,
Don't hate me
go
for
for it.
saying this, but I remember last year you put a post up after that show that came out on Netflix about the twin flames. And this
Oh
mis
God. Oh my God. Jeff and Shalia.
did
Ugh,
you
they
know?
weren't even. Yeah, I know them. I worked with their clients. Their clients were very
Oh,
difficult people,
traumatized, no?
traumatized as well, but also had a lot of issues. Yeah, that was a cult. I
It
mean,
was, yes.
yeah, and so like even within the twin flame community, those people were not taken seriously. Like
Okay.
everybody knew that you had to stay away from them, except of course for the people who were drawn to those kind of teachings. But yeah, I mean, I worked with one of their clients who was kind of forced to become the man when she was the woman, and then he was going, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I watched the show to understand the psychology behind it. You
yeah,
know, the motivations behind not only the people that saw these, I don't know, gurus, they were gods, they used to say they were, but actually both of them, Shalia and was it Jay, you say?
Jeff.
Jeff, yeah. How was like the motivation behind, their behaviors and the things that they said to their clients? But I know that at the time, a lot of things came out on social media because of that.
Yeah.
And I think it created this a lot of misconception around the twin flames.
Mm,
Well, I don't know if it's misconception or not, but like everything is a cult. And
well,
that spiritual work is a cult because they touch a lot in spirituality at some point.
well,
That
they even called it the Ascension School.
exactly. So they put everything into the same bag, and that now healers, especially those that work with the twin flame, but in general, healers and spiritualists that are a cult.
Yeah, well, but Netflix likes to do that, right? Netflix likes to,
True.
make these kind of series that get a lot of views and give a wrong impression. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of like a cowboy country out there within the twin flame community. So they're not completely wrong, but I mean, it's not as bad as this. I mean,
Hmm.
this was just really bad, and these people are not representative of what it means to be on the twin flame journey. Absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a cult in America, hence my American accent, because I lived in California. And it was, I mean, like not all cults are bad cults, they're just systems in which people give away their power to the guru or something like that. And so that dynamic can arise when the leaders of such organizations have such type of wounding.
Hmm.
And yeah, we already said before that the twin flame journey is about facing your wounding, and these people didn't do their own work. But again, that's what I found, especially within the twin flame community, is that a lot of psychics, a lot of healers, a lot of therapists don't do their own work. Yeah,
Okay.
that they don't work on their own healing, and then you have the blind leading the blind. You have to work on your own healing, and that's what I always say is the more you work on your own healing as a healer and therapist, the deeper you can take your own clients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's our responsibility to do that, to work on our own healing, our wounding. Otherwise, we are just projecting our wounding onto our clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
get sore, our ego gets sore if something happens, and we are not giving these people the support that they need. So,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. It depends. Some people disagree with that. They think that because they've kind of like learned a modality, that the modality will do the work. But I've truly found that the deeper you go yourself,
Mm,
the more you can do with that modality because you recognize what's going on.
yes.
And it's again, what we've been talking about all this time, mentally grasping something and truly being able to embody it. An embodied healer embodies their own healing.
Mm, I love that.
And because of that, they can take their clients into the deeper levels of healing. And so, I mean, yes, when I started working with psychiatrists, psychologists, etc., they were ready to go to this deeper level, but that wouldn't have been the case if I hadn't done my healing. you
Yeah.
know then there would have been just a mismatch, because I wouldn't have been the one that would be able to take them to that deeper depth because I hadn't visited that myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Sabriye, what can I say? I knew this was going to be a great conversation. We went in so many places, but I think at the core of our conversation has been actually the wounding. In
Yeah.
so many ways that we are just wounded beings
Oh,
having
well, yeah, I want to say something about that. Sorry for interrupting, but that's the thing that I have come to see, and that I also describe in the Soul Path series, is we use trauma in order to densify our energy fields from light beings into physical beings.
Oh, explain, please.
That's why we carry so much wounding. So when we started out this journey, we were light beings, right? We were
Uh-huh.
souls.
Yes.
We didn't take physical form. It took us really a long time to take physical form, like millions and millions of years, yeah, before we actually were able to take human form. So we did not take human form as we know it today until Atlantis. In Lemuria,
Mm,
we still were like pre-human. We
yes.
weren't actually humans. So that's how far back that goes. So, in order to be able to densify our energy fields, we use trauma so
To,
that to densify our energy fields into physical form.
so we can be heavy and just stay on the earth.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Right? And so that's why, in order to ascend, we
We
need
have
to heal the trauma so that we can lighten our energy fields and go back to light and source. Yeah.
Oh my god. You just dropped the bomb now.
Yeah, that's a nice closer, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so true. It makes so much sense. So we can literally say that we are wounded beings having a human experience.
Exactly. That's how we got here.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Isn't
Oh
it?
my
Isn't
god.
it?
You
I'll
have
link
to
both
tell
the
us.
series.
Yes, I
I
was about to ask, where do you have these series
on
available?
my website, sabriyedubrie.com. I will give you the link so that you can share it in the podcast.
Yes, please. So is it
Yeah.
written or is it videos?
No, it's written. But on the
Mm.
healing the patriarchy series, I'm actually doing live master classes in my group, and so we just published this one, and then the 9th of May, I'm going to do a live class on the mother wound.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Amazing. So, where can our listeners find you and stalk you online? Because I'm sure loads will.
Okay, so let me spell it. My name is Sabriye Dubrie. SABRIYEDUBRE.com. Sabriyedubrie.com. And we're going to put it in the notes, right?
And on social media, are you under the same name?
Yes, everywhere you can find me under Sabriye Dubrie, at Sabriye Dubrie, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I will put all links in the show notes as well as your bio and
Perfect.
all the things that we talked about. all the resources that you talked about here about the boys that were fed more than the
Yeah.
girls and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
in the Healing the Patriarchal series. Yeah, that's where I
ah,
wrote about it. Yeah.
right. So I have to have a look at that series. I have to read about it. I mean, oh, I knew like you've been one of my clients in the past with the soul calling blueprint. And I knew from a soul perspective how an amazing soul you are because I've seen you inside. I've seen you as a soul. And I knew these conversations. Like I was so excited when you applied to be on the podcast. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, I love that.
You
And
looked into my soul blueprint.
I did, but I
Yeah.
did. And so many things make sense. And today talking to you, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
so
you.
obvious. Thank you so much. I'm feeling
Yeah.
so grateful and so blessed to have you here, for our conversation today. It was amazing.
I
I've
loved
learned
it
so
too.
much. I learned so
Thank you.
much. I'm sure our listeners will do as well. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you for having me.
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you. And I'll see you very soon.
Bye.
Bye. To finalize this amazing episode with Sabriye, I will pull a card from the Trust Journaling deck. And the card that I pulled is from the Truth Suite. And the soul inquiry is, what do I need to learn about myself right now? What do I need to learn about myself right now? And the affirmation is, I'm becoming closer to be the best version of myself. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to the Sorcery Podcast and for holding space for this conversation. It is truly magical to be able to walk with you on this journey of soul healing and inner transformation. If you resonated with this episode and found it valuable, I would be grateful if you could leave a review on iTunes. Your feedback helps me reach more souls searching for guidance and healing. For more guidance and soul wisdom to support soul awakening women through the journey of alchemy, please visit my website www.lisiacosta.co.uk. Love and healing to all. See you on the next one.